am Imran Ali, Assistant Professor from Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Greater Noida. In earlier lecture, I had discussed about services scenario in India, where I discussed that there are certain countries whose GDP is largely depend on services like India, United States of America, it is England, and there are other countries too. On the other hand, there are certain countries who are largely dependent or whose GDP is largely dependent on manufacturing. It is China, it is Korea, it is Germany, Japan, and several other countries. But there were few sectors like healthcare, IT, education, BFSI, banking and financial services. The demand in India for these services in the next 10 year or 15 is going to be highest and is going to be high in demand. Today I am going to discuss about difference between product and services. So, these are the few services that I am going to discuss. It is defined what is product and service, what the product and services, distinguish between the product and services, how to discuss challenges in managing the services in that particular context. So, what is the service? Services are deeds, processes and performances provided or co-produced by one entity or a person for the sake of other. So, services are always being provided by one group of person or a person for the sake of other. So, whenever the services are being provided, at one side it is the service provider, at the other side the services consumer or the person who take services. In India, there are several services which are into huge demand, like it is information technology or IT services are into more demand, online education is more into demand, Byju's is doing exceptionally well, Vedanta is doing good. There are several other companies that are that have entered into there and they are exceptionally doing well. A service is the action of doing something for someone, it is largely intangible. So, the one characteristics of these services is what? Services are by and large intangible. You cannot touch it, you cannot see it and you can't taste it. So, if we differentiate between product and services, so the product is tangible, product it is measurable, you can observe it, you can see it, you can watch it. But services neither they are testable nor they are can be measured or neither they can be touched. So, they are having a intangible characteristic of the services. So, that the product and services we can differentiate between the product and services at these variable or with the help of these variable. The first it is about the productivity product versus services. So, it output, it is the customer contact, it is the labor content of the job, it is operation variation, measurement of productivity, quality assurance, inventory and wages. So, these are the different characteristics. Based on that, I am going to differentiate how service is different from the product and how product are different from the services. On each these variable, I am going to differentiate each of them. Before I go in detail, I am explaining a product is something that satisfy consumer need. A product is something that satisfy consumer need and products are by nature observable or tangible. On the other hand, services have intangible aspects, they cannot be measured and they cannot be touched by one or the other. Now, first it is the output. So, in the case of the goods or in the case of the services, the output is what? It is tangible. What Hero Honda is producing, what Bajaj Auto is producing, what TVS Motors is producing, what General Motors is producing, it is what? It is visible, it is tangible. You can just touch that, you can see what actually it is going to be produced. But on the other hand, when we discuss about services, services since they are intangible, but you can't touch them, you can't see them, they are not visible by nature. For example, a doctor is providing the services to the client and he is talking about the kind of disease he is facing or the problem that he is facing, but you can't exactly identify that what problem he is facing, and you cannot see what kind of product in between doctor and patient it is being dealt with. So, whatever he is suggesting, it is a service, but this service is intangible. Similarly, it is about a lawyer, he is defending the case of his client, but that is not measurable. You can't measure it that this is what this is how the case is being defended in the court. Similarly, a professor in the class, he is delivering a lecture, but that lecture it is not tangible in itself, it is intangible. So, the one major difference between the good and the services is services are intangible and goods are tangible. So, services you can't see them, you can't measure them, whereas the goods that are visible and measurable. Customer contact into manufacturing unit or into manufacturing, customer contact is low. What customer contact I mean to say hereby, that customers are in front of you or customers is observing what you are saying, what you are delivering, what you are saying or promising to them. So, when we discuss this into manufacturing, the customer contact is very low, customer contact is very low. But on the other hand, into these services, customer contact is very high. A bank manager sitting or a cashier into a bank, he is providing services to the client and the client or the customer is in front of him. He is observing what he is saying and client immediately can say whether he is satisfied with the services or he is not satisfied with the services. So, since the customer contact is very high and saying of the customer is very high into the services, so the involvement of the customer into services is very high. Similarly, into class, a professor is delivering the lecture, students are sitting, customer, they are observing what is being delivered, what he is saying, what promises are being made. On the other hand, into the manufacturing, customer contact is very low. Goods are manufactured in factory, in plant layouts, and once they are being manufactured, then they are being delivered and then they reach to the consumer by the distributor and retailer. So, once the goods were manufactured in the factory, customer had no say and customer were not supposed to say anything at that point of time. Whatever it is being manufactured, it will reach later to the customer. But in case of the services, right at the time when the services are being produced or delivered, customer is there. So, there is a possibility of immediate correction, but in case of the manufacturing or in case of the manufacturing outlet, immediate correction possibility is not there. Next, it is labor contents of the job. Into the manufacturing, labor content is very low, because maximum manufacturing here it is through the machinery, largely by equipments. So, maximum manufacturing will take place over here, it will be through the machinery, not by the labor content. Next, it is about the services. Here the labor content or the contribution of the labor is high. It is said into manufacturing that skill of manpower training of manpower is very important, because the quality of the services is only dependent on the quality of employees and the quality of manpower, since in services the content of the labor is very high, whereas the content of the labor into the manufacturing is very low. And gradually you will see, especially into the manufacturing, the automation, robotics, automation is replacing the manpower, or it is reducing the labor content, either because of the advancement of technology, or it is because companies are keen to increase their productivity. They want to produce more within a minimum possible time. So, this is what the low operation the labor content is low, because maximum manufacturing there is being made by machinery, technology and equipment. Next, it is about services. The services, it is high services are being maintained, and the high services has been taken into demand. So, the labor content into the services will always be high. Next, it is about operation variations. Operation variations, it is goods, it is operations variation into manufacturing sector or into manufacturing. Operation variations are likely to be very low, because it is the manufacturing, there is a certain process which is already being fixed, and through fixed process it is being decided and determined that how your goods are going to be manufacturing, or your goods are going to be manufactured. So, your operations variations will decide. Operation variations means a way of manufacturing goods or providing services. So, variation into manufacturing, it is very low, since it is the machinery it is going to be produced. Into the services, the variations are very high. As I discussed in the case of the banking, need of every client is different. So, as a banking manager or operation manager provide the services to client X will be very different from the client Y. Somebody want to deposit the cash, somebody want to take loans, somebody had some problem in accessing account and some other problem. So, the variation into operation in a bank is going to be different, because the demand of every client is not same. But in case of manufacturing, process to manufacturing a particular good will remain same. See, a doctor either into Fortis or into Apollo or into any other hospital, you will say that the demand or the requirement of every patient is different. We can't say that there is a fixed disease in every patient and we can automize it. We cannot automize it. Doctor has to listen the patient very carefully and has to prescribe it as per the requirement of that particular patient. So, it is how we have to say high, low and like that. Next, it is about measurement of productivity. Into the measurement, how you are going to decide and how you are going to determine the productivity. So, in case of manufacturing, productivity is, or measurement of the productivity is easy, but in case of the services, measurement of productivity is very difficult. In case of the manufacturing, I said, since the produce or the good that we are going to manufacture, they are tangible. It is easy that how many units of good are being manufactured at some point in time, we easily can measure it. But in case of the good services, in the case of the services, measurement of the productivity is very difficult, because the nature of the services different, requirement of every patient is different. For example, a doctor who is dealing with a very difficult case, he may take lot of time to deal with a difficult case or a serious client. So, we can't say that his productivity is low. So, in case of services, it will be difficult for us to measure the productivity or nature of the productivity. Next, it is about quality assurance. In manufacturing sector, quality assurance is very easy. Since goods are to be manufactured, process are automized, we can fix what is to be produced and how it is to be produced. So, quality assurance and quality standardization can be fixed in place or put in place. On the other hand, these are the services which are challenging in itself. Next, it is about inventory. So, in inventory, it is manufacturing or goods inventory into manufacturing, it is high, whereas in the case of the services, inventory is very low. Inventory, it is in the case of the goods or manufacturing, we keep certain goods for future demand or for sudden demand that came into existence. To meet that sudden demand, we will produce certain goods. So, that inventory or will came into picture. On the other hand, the in services sector, inventory, it is very difficult because you can't store your services. So, in case sudden demand rise, it will be difficult for us to meet the demand in case of services, or variation into demand in services is difficult to be made, but in case of the manufacturing, it can be met easily. Next, it is the wages. It is into the manufacturing, less variation is happen, but in case of the services, the variation is very high because the clients or the requirement of the skill in each and every sector is different. So, where the high skill is required, salary will be high, where the skill requirement is low, salary structure is going to be the lowest. Next, again these are the things, the product, as I said, it is a thing or it is tangible, whereas service, it is a process. And why it is a process? Because one person at end provides the services for the other. Next, it is tangible, it is intangible. The goods are homogeneous, whereas services are heterogeneous. Why is product are homogeneous? Because nature of a product is same. So, the similar nature will be maintained, whereas the services will be heterogeneous, they will be vary as per the client of, as per the requirement of the client. Production and distribution are separated from consumption. Into manufacturing, production at one place and consumption is at another place. But in case of the services, production and consumption took place at the same time. Next, it is core value produced in factory, core value produced in buyer seller interaction. So, here the value creation happen into manufacturing in factory because they are produced over there. In case of the services, the value is being created when the buyer and sellers are in the interaction. Next, customer do not participate in the production process, customer participate into the production process. Manufacturing mein there is no involvement of the customer, but into services customer is in front of you. Can be kept into stock, it is inventorable, it is not inventorable. Transfer of ownership, no as such transfer of ownership because of intangibility. But when there are some differences, there are certain similarities also between goods and services. So, where the goods and services are similar, it is forecasting, capacity planning. So, forecasting, it is what we are likely to say that whether the demand for our goods and services will be high or low. So, as we are going to be forecasting about goods, similarly we are forecasting about services also. If I am going to, or a company manager has to forecast that the demand for the tractors is going to increase in the next 1 year. Similarly, a aviation company, either it is Indigo or SpiceJet, they can also forecast that the demand for the aviation industry due to COVID-19 are not likely to be very high in the next 1 year. Similarly, the multiplexes can also forecast, they are also providing services that due to COVID-19 people are not very comfortable to come inside the multiplexes. So, the demand for the multiplexes will not be very high in the next 1 year. Similarly, the demand for information technology and software will be very high because our businesses and our services are going to be more dependent on IT or information technology. So, since there are so many differences between goods and services, at some ground there is some similarity between goods and services, and one of the similarity that I have outlined and that I have discussed, it is forecasting. It is forecasting that what is the probability or the scenario of the demand for the goods and services in the next 1 year or so. Next, it is about process management. Capacity planning is also there. Capacity planning is that how much they should be able to produce, how many number of unit they are going to produce. So, they need to match this capacity planning. For example, a hospital in COVID-19 scenario, all hospitals was thinking that they need to increase their capacity, number of bed, so that they can meet the client. Similarly, into the manufacturing, they need to increase their plant, so that if the demand goes increase, they are increasing more into. So, capacity planning happen in both the context. Capacity planning happen in goods as well as capacity planning happen into services. Next, it is about process management. Process is being there in the case of the goods, and process is also happening in the case of services. In the case of the product, there is a process of manufacturing the goods, and this process need to be maintained so that there should be no defect and the quality is going to be highest. On the other hand, there has to be a process of providing certain services, and every company into services sector, either it is bank, financial institution, NBFCs, loan housing providing companies, either multiplexes, either insurance companies, either it is software companies, all companies are in search of or making effort that their process should be short, process should be short. So, process is being managed in both manufacturing as well as in services. It is managing variation, I mean to say that away from target, standard deviation. So, the quality or standardization that you have to keep for goods, it should not be much away from that, and the standardization that we have keep for services, it should not be much away from them. If there is a more variation, there is a much away from the standardization, then the quality of the goods and quality of the services is going to be hampered. Next, it is about monitoring and controlling cost and productivity. In both the operation, we had to observe and see that monitoring and controlling should be a priority of the customer as well as of the organization. So, either these are the service organization or these are the manufacturing organization. The similarity both of them is that both of them are looking that how we can cut their cost, how they can increase their productivity. So, they always will be in search of. Next, it is about supply chain management. So, it is involved into manufacturing as well as in services, and supply chain, it is what? It is the chain sourcing of raw material, how it came inside the plant, how it is converted from input to output, and then how it reached to the distributor, then retailer and to the consumer. So, this entire chain from outsourcing to the raw material to them, it is being considered as supply chain. Next, it is location planning. I had discussed much in detail why location planning is important, what factor we need to take into account while location planning is happening. Inventory management must be taken care by. quality control is important both in case of the services as well as into the product. We need to be much concerned about the quality, and this scheduling, it is with respect to the timing, we need to schedule of services. And now essential services in goods producing companies, even some companies that are not into services, they are purely into the manufacturing, but still they are providing certain services, and these services are, they are providing training consistently to their employees to increase their productivity, human resource management, customer care services are being, there is a unit even into manufacturing organization. It is equipment repair, procurement and administrative services being provided. Now, there are certain challenges into managing services. It is combination of tangibility and intangibility. For example, a airplane, so there is a some component of the products and there is a some component of the services. So, somewhere you will find out there are certain product or services, they are having both, some component of will be product and some component will be of services. Next, it is lack of ability to store them for future sale, mismatch between the demand and supply. Since services are not storable, we can't keep them into store, it will be difficult for them to keep for future sales or future demand. Next, it is about greater interaction between customer and service provider. So, in case of the services, since there is a more interaction or customers are involved in the process of the providing services. Next, it is greater variability in service delivery. So, it is called as the service standardization, McDonald and IAMS. So, the variability is there at some companies very having a very different standard of providing the services, other companies are having a very different standard of providing services. So, it is a challenge for them. Greater variability services, customer expectation in. So, customer into services, customer expectations are not same, customer expectations are different. So, services companies may face this challenge in terms of facing or in terms of meeting the demand of the customer, because it is very hard to measure the demand of the clients in terms of what they are expecting and how these services are going to be matched or managed. So, we will these are the few challenges that are being services. These are the certain industry, healthcare services, professional services, financial services, hospitality, travels. These are the major services that are I had discussed in detail. So, this was all about the differences between product and services. Thank you so much.